La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah.
So, for meditation, people can use this for calming themselves, becoming more centered and more present. They're using it to help with some type of issues they have psychologically. They're dealing with it in their therapist appointments. But is this something that is Islamic to meditate? Is this okay? Is this something that's a bid'ah? Or is this something that is part of the sunnah and something that is encouraged for us to do?
This is something that many Muslims ask, meditation sounds great, but is it halal, or is it haram, or is it a bid'ah, right? I think those who have studied it and are uncertain, they may come to the conclusion that meditation practice is a kind of bid'ah, or is a kind of innovation, because it was never seen in this way, shape, or form in the Prophet's time, alayhi salatu salam. That's simply incorrect. Actually, there's multiple instances, many instances, so many that some are not even recorded, but some are, that the case can be made that the Prophet ﷺ was always in a contemplative state. So being in a contemplative state is a mode of meditation. To be in contemplation of what? Of Allah's signs, of the signs of Allah outside of us and the signs of Allah inside of us. Especially inside of us, but even outside of us. To contemplate the signs of God in nature is a form of meditation, and that is a prophetic practice. To contemplate God's signs inwards is also, in ourselves, is actually also a prophetic practice, not necessarily well known. But the famous verse, sanurihim ayatina fil afaq wa fi anfusihim hatta yatabayyanahu annahu al-haq, that and we shall show them our signs outside of us, upon the horizons, in nature, upon the horizons, and we shall show them our signs inside of themselves, until it becomes clear to them that He is the truth, meaning that God is the truth. So what's interesting here is that Allah states in the plural that we shall show them, our signs. So it's something we're participating in, that Allah is showing us by us meditating, by us contemplating. So this is a beautiful example, a Quranic and a Sunnati example. But perhaps if it's asked, well, contemplation is one thing, but when someone is sitting down in silence, maybe observing the breath and just being silent, where do we see that practice in the Sunnah, of the Prophet ﷺ? And the most well-known example is in various, hadith, a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ, apart from the contemplative practices, the spiritual practices, the rites of worship, the revealed forms of, of worship, apart from the fara'id, the obligations such as the 5-time prayers, where obviously one, and especially the Prophet ﷺ, would be in a state of meditation and contemplation in those ritual practices. And in his case, even the night vigil, which was more or less an obligation on him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was in states of deep contemplation. But it's well known in Sahih Hadiths that after the Fajr prayer, he would of course, if we go back on the timeline, he would be in the Hajjat prayer for the last third or the last 2/3 of the night. Then there would be the call, for the Fajr prayer, and the Sahaba Ikram would come together, and he would lead them in the Fajr prayer, in the dawn prayer. And at that point, there are multiple hadiths that state that the companions witnessed this, and they reported it, that the Prophet ﷺ, after the Fajr prayer, would sit in silence, and would sit still in silence, still facing the Qibla, the sacred direction of the prayer, and would sit still in silence in a state of khushu', in a state of submissiveness, and and presence in the body, the mind, and the heart. They would see a sense of presence in him, the same sense of presence that was in his ritual prayer, his salat. And he would stay silent, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, until the ishraq time, the prayer for the ishraq, which is a prophetic practice, not obligatory, but a prophetic practice, a sunnah, to stand about 15 to 20 minutes after sunrise, right? And then, to offer that prayer. Right? Now, on the usual, it takes about an hour and a half to get from the beginning of Fajr until sunrise, an hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half. So he would wait then 15 minutes longer. So in other words, for about an hour and a half, the Prophet ﷺ, at least an hour or an hour and a half, he sat in silent meditation. And this is an explicit practice of the Prophet ﷺ. And in some of the riwayah, and some of the narrations of these ahadith, there were times or moments where he sat in silence, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in a form of blessed prophetic silence. But he also sat reciting Quran as well. So both of these cases occur in the ahadith, and they're both modes of meditation or spiritual practice. And so if sitting in silence, in a state of presence, facing the sacred direction for more than an hour is not meditation, then I don't know what is. So we have the perfect exemplar and the perfect example of meditation in Islamic practice in the Sunnah of Rasul Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and so obviously that makes that particular time a very mubarak or blessed time for practicing meditation. But this particular practice can be practiced at any point in time, and with really the intention that one is following the Messenger of God sallallahu alaihi wasallam in regards to emptying one's heart and one's mind and stilling oneself to receive the blessings of God, whether before the prayer, in the prayer, and especially after the prayer, where now one is in a state of peace. One has said assalamu alaikum to the right and assalamu alaikum to the left. If just imagine staying in that state of peace. First we were in the salat of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then in his salam, right? So I gave this, like the vertical and the horizontal. So this very symbolically means, because in ritual prayer we stand, so there's a verticality, but then we're sitting. And then rather than remaining vertical, we then turn horizontally and we exit the ritual prayer. In a sense, we're returning from the spirit into our heart from a meditative standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint. For the prayer, the ritual prayer is the mi'raj of the mu'min, is the spiritual ascension of the believer while they pray. So it's as if the spirit comes back into the heart, and then the blessings, the salawat it has received from God, the heart then begins to radiate it and share it in peace to its horizontal experience, to the right and to the left. So now imagine, rather than standing up and walking and running away, just imagine if we sat here in that very blessed space and moment and time and just sat. That's really the benefit of meditation, especially after the ritual prayer. So, all of these moments before the ritual prayer, to prepare ourselves, to empty ourselves, during the ritual prayer, because we're in a state of contemplation and presence and humility and khushu, as we call it, and just the dhikr of Allah, the remembrance of God in those postures and in what we say, that we're in meditation. And then after, when we give the salam to the right and the left, that's a beautiful moment to just simply sit and be in a state of what is called Muraqaba, to be in a state of attentiveness to what has been received from God. So all of this then becomes meditation, and it is meditation, and it is a prophetic practice and can be practiced at any time. Before the ritual prayer, during the ritual prayer, and after the ritual prayer.
Sure.
So that's just one example. There's many others, but if sometimes we're hard pressed to to answer, well, how about silent meditations? Where do we see this in the Prophet ﷺ? And so we see it there. So that's a beautiful example. One final, is where the Prophet ﷺ has stated that if the believer has nothing positive or good to actually say, then they should remain silent. So, silence, its cultivation, a contemplative silence is the prophetic default state, that we should be cultivating not just regular silence, because people can be silent because they're angry. People can be silent because they're scheming. People can be silent for a lot of reasons, because they just simply don't want to respond. And some of those are neutral, some of those are positive, some of those are kind of negative. But contemplative silence is something else. To remain silent and to cultivate that particular prophetic practice, which is called samt, is a form of meditation. So there's so many examples, but those are a few.
لا إله إلا الله 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 لا إله إلا الله